Hello, BookTube. I am going to read you a psalm today for Psalm Sunday. I think I missed last week. Certainly I feel like I did. I've been a little bit sporadically buried in work. But I wanted to continue because a lot of you have really enjoyed this, and I really enjoy it too, where we read a psalm and talk about it. That's all. It's as simple as that. So I picked a psalm for today. We're going to start with the King James Bible. This is the Norton Critical King James Bible. I picked Psalm 121. And we're gonna read it in a few translations, then talk a little bit about it, and then we'll be done. No trouble at all. So Psalm number 121 goes like this in the King James Bible. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which hath made heaven and earth. He will not suffer my foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. So there you have the typical rolling cadence of the King James. That is just lovely. Absolutely lovely. Now we're going to move on to slightly modernized King James, the New English Bible. And we'll see what they have to say for Psalm 121. And here we have if, conditional. If I lift up my eyes to the hills, where shall I find help? Help comes only from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. How shall he let your foot stumble? How could he, your guardian, sleep? The guardian of Israel never slumbers, never sleeps. The Lord is your guardian, your defense at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you against all evil. He will guard you body and soul. The Lord will guard your going and your coming, now and forevermore. Notice there, that is not at all like the King James, but it has a rhythm of its own that's just lovely. It's more concise. There's less orotundity there, but it is absolutely wonderful. How could he, your guardian, sleep? Delightful. Delightfully concise there. Now we're going to move on to the New Jerusalem Bible. So happy that I got this thing. Absolutely love it. As I pointed out before on Psalm Sunday, the cover is actually a picture of me arriving on BookTube. Let's see what Psalm 121 is in the New Jerusalem Bible. Let me get a handful of the pages here. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where is my help to come from? No conditional, no if. You have to pay attention to little details like translation like that, not because you're a Hebrew scholar, but because you want to know which one reads well to you, which one you like the most, and that is a change. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where is my help to come from? My help comes from Yahweh, who made heaven and earth. May he save your foot from stumbling. Notice, may he. Here's hoping that he does, not saying he will, like the other two did. May he. May he save your foot from stumbling. May he, your guardian, not fall asleep. That's very different. That is phrased differently. That English is shaded differently. It's asking, it's hoping that that doesn't happen, not saying that it won't. May he save your foot from stumbling. May he, your guardian, not fall asleep. You see, he neither sleeps nor slumbers, the guardian of Israel. Yahweh is your guardian, your shade, Yahweh at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Yahweh guards you from all harm. Yahweh guards your life. Yahweh guards your comings and goings, henceforth and forever. That, I think, the just rote repetition there, the way that the rhythm of it, sort of underlines that this was probably a liturgical call and response. It was probably, I'm up here on the dais and I say one thing, you say the other. Then I say the next one, then you say the other. I think that translation brings out that aspect of it a lot more strongly. That this was a participatory thing. That this wasn't a poem written by somebody in a tent for being read as a poem. This was part of a service, and that makes a little bit more sense. But we then want to move on to something more modern on the iPad. This is the Bible Gateway. If you go to Google and you type in Psalm 121, almost certainly you are going to get this. Bible Gateway they're pretty good with SEO, so you're going to get them for almost anything. So let's see. This is the NIV, but we've seen sometimes they tweak it just a bit. We'll see what they have to say about Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. So once again, as we've seen in the NIV, a very, very clean, very ordinary, everyday cadence, a very ordinary, readable thing. No wonder the NIV is so popular. Because it doesn't put up any kind of the gateways that older or more scholarly translations do. No wonder people like it so much. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I've mentioned many times, in order to find a Bible that agrees with you, you have to try them all. You've noticed, even in these 4 translations, that the shading, the cadence here is very different. One is very call and response. A few change things. This doesn't have any conditionals in it. It doesn't say, well, if I do this, then what? The translations change the psalm from the narrator saying this will happen, the Lord will protect you, to saying, let's hope the Lord protects you. May he do so. May you live long and prosper. That sort of thing, where I don't know that it's going to happen. I'm just hoping that it does. And then the response to it says, he does. You have to play around with these things in order to see which one you like. And when we're talking about the psalm in general, if you dig into this, its historicity, its historical context, well, then you get a whole bunch of surmise and conjecture on the part of biblical scholars, and that's interesting in its own right. But a lot of Christians, I would say most Christians, come at the Psalms without any of that. They are expecting that the Psalms are speaking directly to them, directly to their faith. And I, for instance, came to the Psalms that way. I think most Christians do, and this presents some problems if you do that. Typically, when you're reading a psalm and you're approaching it that way, that here's a poem, but I believe it's divinely inspired, so it will speak to my faith. It won't just be a poem. This isn't the same thing as reading Coleridge. It will speak to my faith. Most of the time when you're doing that with a psalm, you have to be ready right away, in almost every psalm, to shift into the metaphorical. Because it was written thousands of years ago by people who lived in tents and herded cattle and fought with bronze weapons and had no internet and no knowledge of any nations on earth. They had no idea that the continents existed. No idea that there was life in the oceans. No idea of anything like that. No one who was ever connected with any of these things ever even knew anything about a grizzly bear, for instance, a common thing like that. So you have to be ready. The poems are explicitly written in that small and local worldview, and you have to shift into the metaphorical to make them speak generally to your faith here in the modern day. That's just a necessary thing for you to do when you're reading these things as documents of faith rather than documents of literature. You all know that, right? You have to do that. You can't just read these things literally. Otherwise, they're of no use to you as bolsters to your faith. So I understand that, and I get that. And this psalm makes that almost impossible. Most of them make that easy, that shift into the metaphorical. Because most psalms will have generalized things like, you will be my help, you will be my succor, you will thwart my enemies. Those are vague enough things so that you can say, okay, well, that does apply to my life, right? My night shift manager's been riding my ass for a week. He's my enemy. You could say that. You could say, well, you're talking obstacle. Well, I'm having a tough time paying for my kids' chemo. That's an obstacle. Your night shift manager, the existence of night shifts, the existence of chemotherapy, totally unknown to the original writer of the psalm. But if you shift into the metaphorical, you can make it work. You can make it so that it bolsters your faith. Some psalms make that harder than others. I think this one makes it impossible. I don't know what you would do if you wanted to do this. There are parts of this psalm that simply aren't true. They never were true. They weren't true in King David's day, and they aren't true now. Especially the standout line from this psalm, the sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. Well, the moon can't harm you, but the sun certainly can, and everybody at the time this psalm was written knows that. And that's a pretty tough thing to shift into the metaphorical, right? It'd be a different thing if it said the light will not harm you by day, because then you'd have a little leeway, but the sun is the sun. And if you stand out in it too long, it will burn your skin. If you're out in it too many days in a row, it will give you cancer. It is certainly going to wipe out life on this planet. At some point or another, it is going to wipe out life on this planet. It won't be human life. But sooner or later, the star that is the sun is going to go nova and destroy this planet, swallow it up in an instant. Not to mention things like if you Google the Carrington event, 1859, you'll see that the sun can easily hurt you by day. It doesn't matter. There's no such thing. It's impossible to say that no Christian has ever, no believing, no faithful Christian has ever been hurt by the sun. That's absurd to say. And it doesn't work as a metaphor because what are you supposed to say otherwise? How are you supposed to shift that into the metaphorical? It is specifically saying that if you have faith in Yahweh or the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth, the sun will not harm you by day. You know that's not true. And that's tough. That makes this it's a beautiful piece of rhetoric, but it makes this tough to do. The New Jerusalem Bible mentions in a note that this can be seen as a song of affirmation, of ascension. This is something to buck you up, either on the road to your annual trip to the temple in Jerusalem, or as the New Jerusalem Bible says, or on your faith walk to the New Jerusalem in heaven. And okay, and I see that. You are responding. You don't even need a priest and a responding congregation. It can be a call and response inside your own soul. When my soul is downtrodden, I am asking, who will help me? And my faith should answer inside me. It will be the Lord who will shade your right hand, who will guide you and guard you, who won't let your foot stumble. In that sense, I can understand that this would be a great source of comfort for a modern Christian who is not going at this from a scholarly angle. But I think that a Christian like that would just have to ignore that line about the sun not hurting you. I don't see a way to shift that into the metaphorical. And we encounter that from time to time in Psalms, where you encounter their limitations, because when they were written, there were no Christians in the world, and there was no thought of Christianity. They were written for a different religion, in a different time, in a completely different era, in a completely different religion. So adapting them to the religion that has now given them a new currency can sometimes be difficult. It can sometimes be very difficult. When a psalm is about, defeating your foe in battle, you can metaphorize that, but not the sun in the sky. So very interesting, very poetic, but with its limitations. I'd be interested to know how Christians get around this. I would imagine they use the rest of the psalm to buck themselves up and just sort of politely ignore the line that is factually wrong. But we'll see. We shall see, and we'll move on. We'll move all around the corpus of Psalms. So we'll move on. I'll try not to skip Psalm Sunday next week. And we'll just do another one in 4 different translations to see what we make of it. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.